I was the best man at my brother's wedding. Then the bride handed me a letter that changed everything. Before you judge me, please wait until you hear the whole story. Because if you had asked anyone at that wedding who was most excited for the bride and groom, they would have pointed at me. I was the best man. I gave the speech. I organized the bachelor party. I stood beside my younger brother while he promised to love the woman of his dreams forever. And less than 24 hours later, I was sitting in a police station answering questions about his disappearance. No, he wasn't kidnapped. He wasn't murdered. He chose to disappear. And somehow, it was because of a letter that wasn't even meant for me. Even after 3 years, I still replay that wedding in my head, searching for the exact moment everything went wrong. Sometimes I think it happened weeks before the ceremony. And sometimes I think it happened the second I opened that envelope. But one thing is certain. If I'd never read that letter, my family might still be together. My name isn't important. Neither are the names of anyone involved. Most of them are trying to move on, and I don't want strangers showing up in their lives. I'm 34 now. Back then I was 31. My younger brother was 28. He'd been dating his fiancée for almost 5 years. Everyone adored her. She was kind, funny, smart. She remembered birthdays, helped my mom decorate every Christmas, visited my dad in the hospital when he had surgery. Honestly, she felt like family long before the wedding. People always joked that she was the daughter my parents never had. So when my brother proposed, nobody was surprised. If anything, people wondered why he'd waited so long. The wedding planning lasted nearly a year. It was beautiful, expensive, stressful. Exactly what you'd expect. I handled most of the best man responsibilities: the bachelor trip, the rings, the speeches. Making sure my brother actually remembered to eat on the wedding day. He was a nervous wreck, not because he doubted marrying her, because he wanted everything to be perfect. The morning of the wedding, he pulled me aside. He hugged me tighter than usual. Then he said something that didn't seem strange until much later. "If anything ever happens, take care of Mom." I laughed. "What are you talking about?" He smiled. "Nothing. Wedding nerves." I wish I had asked more questions. The ceremony was perfect. People cried. People laughed. The vows were beautiful. Even the weather cooperated. If you'd frozen time right there, it would have looked like one of those weddings people dream about. Then came the reception. About halfway through dinner, the bride walked over to me. She looked nervous. She handed me a small sealed envelope. She smiled and whispered, "Give this to him tomorrow morning. Promise you won't lose it." I looked at the envelope. My brother's name was written across the front, nothing else. I slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket. "Don't worry, he'll get it." That should have been the end of it. Except, about an hour later, someone accidentally spilled an entire glass of red wine down my suit. I rushed into the venue's restroom trying to save the jacket while hanging it over the sink. The envelope slipped out. It landed directly in the water. I panicked. The ink started bleeding almost immediately. I needed to dry it before it became unreadable. So, I carefully opened it, not because I wanted to invade their privacy, because I thought I'd need to move the paper into another envelope. At least, that's what I told myself. The first sentence stopped me cold. "If you're reading this before tomorrow, something has gone terribly wrong." I stared at it, then kept reading. She explained she'd written 2 letters. One she'd give him privately. The second was this one, insurance, just in case she'd lost the courage. She confessed that 6 months before the wedding, she had discovered something about my brother, something she'd kept secret while deciding whether to leave. According to the letter, my brother had secretly borrowed almost $200,000, not for gambling, not for drugs, not for another woman, for my father. I felt my heart pounding. Dad's business had collapsed 2 years earlier. We all knew he'd struggled financially, but he'd insisted everything was under control. Apparently, it wasn't. My brother had taken out personal loans, maxed out credit cards, even borrowed against retirement savings, all without telling anyone, especially not his fiancée. The letter said she only discovered it because debt collectors mistakenly called her. She confronted him. He admitted everything, then begged her not to cancel the wedding. He promised he'd tell everyone afterward. She believed him. But she wasn't sure he'd actually do it. That's why she'd written the letter, so he couldn't hide forever. I folded the pages. My hands were shaking. This wasn't cheating. This wasn't betrayal. It was something far more complicated. Love, sacrifice, fear. I should have sealed it again, pretended I'd never seen it. Instead, I confronted my brother that same night. The reception was almost over. People were dancing. I pulled him outside. I asked one question. What debt? His face went completely white. He looked at the open envelope, then at me. You read it? I nodded. He didn't deny anything. He simply sat on the curb and started crying. I'd never seen my little brother cry before. Not when Grandpa died, not when he broke his leg. Never. He admitted everything. Dad's business had secretly been drowning for years. Banks refused more loans. Dad was days away from losing the house, so my brother stepped in. He believed he could pay everything back before anyone found out. Instead, interest exploded. The debt doubled, then tripled. He became trapped. Every month he borrowed more money just to pay old loans. I asked the obvious question. Why didn't you tell us? He laughed. Not because it was funny, because he couldn't believe I'd asked. Would you have let Dad lose everything? I didn't answer, because honestly, I don't know. He begged me not to ruin the wedding. Please, just one more day. I promised. The next morning, he was gone. No note, no phone, no luggage. Just gone. His wife woke up alone. At first, everyone assumed he'd gone for coffee. Then breakfast passed. Then lunch. By evening, police were searching. His new wife completely fell apart. She believed he'd abandoned her. My parents were devastated. Dad kept saying, "This is my fault." None of us understood what he meant. Until I finally handed over the letter. Everything came out. The loans, the business, the lies. Dad admitted he'd known about some of the borrowing, just not how much. Mom discovered they were nearly bankrupt. The bride discovered her husband had disappeared because he couldn't face starting a marriage built on financial deception. The police eventually located him 3 states away, living in his car. He hadn't run from the law, he'd run from shame. He truly believed everyone would be better off without him. It took weeks to convince him to come home. The marriage didn't survive. His wife said she still loved him. But she couldn't build a future with someone who hid life-changing decisions. I don't blame her. He doesn't either. Today, 3 years later, he's slowly rebuilding. The debt is almost gone. Dad sold the business. Mom went back to work. Our family survived. But it looks different now. Quieter. More honest. Sometimes I still think about that envelope. People ask whether I regret opening it. The answer is complicated. If I hadn't, maybe the honeymoon would have happened. Maybe the marriage would have lasted a few more months. Maybe the truth would have exploded after children, after mortgages, after even more lies. Or maybe reading that letter simply forced the truth into the open sooner. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about money. It wasn't about marriage. It wasn't even about secrets. It was this. Some people will destroy themselves trying to protect the people they love. From the outside, that looks noble. But real love isn't carrying every burden alone. Real love is trusting the people beside you enough to let them help carry it. My brother thought silence was protecting us. Instead, it nearly cost him everything. So if you're hiding something today because you're convinced your family couldn't handle the truth, ask yourself one question: are you protecting them? Or are you protecting yourself from having to ask for help? Because sometimes the heaviest burden isn't the secret. It's believing you have to carry it alone.